Now let's take a look at the role of the Rothschild family, the family said to be the wealthiest in the world. When Amschel Meyer Bauer inherited the business, he decided to change his name to Rothschild. Amschel soon learned that loaning money to governments and kings was more profitable than loaning to private individuals. Not only were the loans bigger, but they were secured by the nation's taxes. Mayer Rothschild had 5 sons. He trained them all in the skills of money creation, then sent them out to the major capitals of Europe to open branch offices of the family banking business. His first son, Amschel Meyer, stayed in Frankfurt to mind the hometown bank. His second son, Solomon, was sent to Vienna. His third son, Nathan, was clearly the most clever. He was sent to London at age 21 in 1798, 100 years after the founding of the Bank of England. His fourth son, Karl, went to Naples, and his fifth son, Jacob, went to Paris. The Rothschilds soon grew unbelievably wealthy. By the mid-1800s, they dominated all European banking and were certainly the wealthiest family in the world.
Shalom Akyam, this is Ariella. First off, I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Once again, I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. I want to send double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to you brothers around the globe, pushing the word of sincerity and truth. And I don't know what I'm going to name this yet. I think what I'm going to name it, it might be There's Nothing New Under the Sun, history of the Bank of England. Because there's a lot of things going on the planet Earth right now, you know, and I know for a lot of Akyam, it seems very convoluted. It seems very confusing, you know, and so a lot of brothers are like, I don't deal with that stuff like that. But all of these things play in prophecy. All of these things play in what the Most High has got going on the planet Earth and the words that He's written. And so, in the scripture says for us to basically that we know all things. So you have different brothers that go into different things and bring out information, but it's all concerning the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai in these last days. And one of the things that you got going on right now is the Brexit vote. The Brexit vote is being actually carried on today, and it's set to be announced tomorrow. And it could bring a lot of things to the global markets and to the world, and to this world as we know it, man. So it's important. It plays out. It plays into the Most High's prophecy. Okay, so I'm going to read this real quick. This is Isaiah 55:8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, said the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as rain cometh down and the snow from heaven, and returneth not thither, but watereth the earth, and maketh it bring forth and bud, that it may give seed to the sower and bring to the eater, so shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in a thing whereto I sent it. Okay? So when the Most High set something up on the planet Earth, he prescribed that Esau would have the fatness of the earth, and that the wicked would gain control of the earth, pursuant to Job 9:24. Well, there was a process and a measurement of how that played out. Okay? It played out throughout a dispensation of time, and now we are seeing Esau's global domination, where he has acquired the fatness of the earth and ruling with a wicked hand. So we're looking into Esau's mischief, Esau's devices, and we're extracting the understanding from the scriptures by seeing it, man. Okay, so you have the Bank of England, which was basically taken and ran by the Rothschilds. You know, they're at the centerpiece. This is kind of the centerpiece of the Brexit, man. Although you have the European Union Central Bank, which is in Frankfurt, okay, Germany. You know, all these pieces of the puzzle are controlled by Esau, man. So understanding these things and talking about these things, to me are interesting. And Lord willing, this is edifying to you, Akyam. First thing I want to kind of mention and go into is the history of how the Rothschilds kind of got into that area. Okay, now a lot of different brothers have done videos on this, talking about the Khazarian Empire and the conversion of the Khazarians into Jewry, and basically how they were into the Talmud and into Babylonian Gnosticism, and that has grown into what you see the modern day Jews' beliefs today, man. Okay, so I wanted to get this real quick article. This is an old article. I'm pretty sure a lot of you brothers have read it. From Rense.com, The History of the House of Rothschild by Andrew Hitchcock, September 31st, 2010. It says, the Rothschilds have been in control of the world for a very long time, their tentacles reaching into many aspects of our daily lives, as is documented in the following timeline. However, before you jump into the timeline, please read this invaluable introduction, which will tell you who the Rothschilds are as opposed to who they claim to be. The Rothschilds claim that they are Jewish, when in fact they are Khazars. They are from a country called Khazaria, which occupied the landlocked between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, which is now predominantly occupied by Georgia. Okay, so I'll put you know how I do it. I'll put clips up so you brothers can have a visual representation of what's being said. And Lord willing, we'll get through this information and everything comes to light. Okay, it says the reason the Rothschilds claim to be Jewish is that the Khazars, under the instruction of the king, converted to the Jewish faith in 740 AD. But of course, that did not include converting the Asiatic Mongolian genes to the genes of Jewish people. Okay? It says you will find that approximately 90% of people in the world today who call themselves Jews are actually Khazars, or as they like to be known, Ashkenazi Jews. These people knowingly lie to the world with their claims that the land of Israel is theirs by birthright, when in actual fact the real homeland is over 800 miles away in Georgia. Okay, over there in them Caucasus Mountains. Okay,
another dilemma was being created in Judaism far to the east. This was a dilemma not concerning the doctrines of the Jews, but over who actually was a Jew.
In their articles on Khazars, the Jewish encyclopedias tell us that in the 8th century AD, Jewish missionaries ventured north of Babylon to the land of the Khazars between the Caspian and the Black Seas. Khazaria was a vast grassland on what is now the plains of southern Russia, inhabited by a race of merchants, artisans, and warriors of Hunnish Turkish stock. About 740 AD, the king of the Khazars converted to Judaism and made it the state religion. Incredibly, within a few centuries, the people of Khazaria convinced themselves that they were not Gentiles after all, but the physical descendants of Abraham. Thus, by the 10th century AD, a nation of proselyte Jews thrived in what is now central Russia. During the Middle Ages, the fierce Mongols from the east and Russians from the north drove the Khazars west out of their ancient homeland. Most settled in Eastern Europe, especially Poland, where they established communities of artisans and traders. Judaism thus became divided into two basic groups which remain today: the Ashkenazim, which are the Khazars of the east, and the Sephardic Oriental, which are Jews of Spain, Turkey, and lands bordering on the Mediterranean. Today, the Ashkenazim, or Khazars, are the vast majority, about 80% of those who call themselves Jews.
That's all we need on that, okay? And so once you have those Khazars move over into Germany, what happened was over the dispensation time, because they got pushed over there by other empires, man. You had the Genghis Khan and the Mongols. They pushed them over there. Which, the Genghis Khan, they were considered immigrants, okay, over there in the land of China, okay. And you brothers can go into that, if you want to. But they the ones who pushed the Khazars out of that land over there and around Georgia, Russia, and pushed them further over into the west. Okay. And then you over a period of time, you had a lot of those Jews, as far as coming into England, they were looked down upon, man. They didn't want those people in those lands. So a lot of those Khazars, they began over time to make marriages and pacts with people in Spain, people in Italy, Naples, okay, people in Portugal, okay. And so it took time for Esau to rise his way and swindle his way up, okay, and get himself up in there, okay. And one of the main things that happened was during the time of King James. After King James, his son Charles I, then you had basically the influence of some of these Ashkenazi Jews began to push agenda in and around London and in England, man, so they could get their way up in there. And this brother, this brother here, Hawaii Allah, the brother from Houston, he touches on that. He touches on the Cavaliers, all right, and he touches on its relevance with the Brexit, okay. And I want to just continue on that because I saw that video and it pushed me to do some studying, and I thought it was interesting, man, to see how basically the so-called Jews, the Edomites, worked their way up through time, through mischief, through deceit, okay, paying people off. And that was how the Most High allowed him to get the fatness of the earth, man, for these last times. Okay. Now, also I touched on some of this stuff in a video I did called Usury and Thick Clay. We talk about fractional reserve banking. We talked about the Bank of England itself, and basically that thick clay, that abatiyat that Esau's been able to use to control everything, man. And we go into it further on another sit down that I did called World War III Algorithm, the Big Picture, where I talk about the International Monetary Fund and some of the things that they're pushing for the end of this year. And the Brexit goes right along with it. The Brexit goes right along with what the IMF want in their agenda. They need chaos in the markets in order to get people to accept some of the things that they want to push, man. All right? Because like I always say, you always have to remember that the elite are playing both sides of the field. They're playing what we consider the East, and they're playing what we consider the West. They have central banks in all of these nations, man. All right, but all these nations in some way answer to the International Monetary Fund and all the other diplomatic organizations and institutions that they have around it. All right. Globalism, a global international network that is ordered what to do from the top families, from the top banking families, okay, the top Edomite families. So I just want to read on a couple of things, man. Lord willing, this is edifying, okay. So this is Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell, this is in Wikipedia. He says he was born April 25th, 1599, was an English military and political leader, and later Lord Protector of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland, and Ireland. All right. Cromwell was born into the middle gentry, albeit to a family descended from the sister of King Henry VIII's minister, Thomas Cromwell. He was relatively obscure for the first 40 years of his life. He became an independent Puritan after undergoing a religious conversion in the 1630s, taking a generally tolerant view towards the many Protestant sects of this period. He was an intensely religious man, a self-styled Puritan Moses, and he fervently believed that God was guiding his victories. He was elected member of Parliament for Huntingdon in 1628, for Cambridge in the short 1640, and long blah 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 blah. Well, he says that God was guiding his victories, but when you read about this guy, you find out that a lot of the information that he was getting was coming from them Jews, because the Jews had a network of courier systems, man, where they could get information. And
Changers, Oliver Cromwell finally overthrew King Charles, purged the Parliament, and put the king to death. the money changers were immediately allowed to consolidate their financial power. The result was that for the next 50 years, the money changers plunged Great Britain into a series of costly wars. They took over a square mile of property in the center of London, known as the City of London. This area today is still known as one of the 3 predominant financial centers of the world.
You learn about that in the Napoleonic Wars, because how the Rothschilds became very, very rich during the time of the Napoleonic Wars is very famous. How they were able to get information about the battle or about victories before other people were able to. And so they could make financial decisions that will make them even more rich. Okay? So during the time of Oliver Cromwell basically trying to take down Charles I, who was King James' son, all right? Just as Charles I of England, back in Wikipedia, was monarch of 3 kingdoms of England, Scotland, Ireland, in 1625 until his execution in 1649. He was the second son of King James VI of Scotland, but after his father inherited the English throne in 1603, he moved to England, where he spent much of his rest of his life. All right, and so you brothers can read on that on Charles I and everything that he had going. But when you skip down into this 4th paragraph, it says, from 1642, Charles fought armies of the English and Scottish parliaments in the English Civil War, and the leader of those English and Scottish parliaments was Oliver Cromwell. Okay, so basically Charles I was a Jake, and Oliver Cromwell conspired with those Khazarian Jews of the time to basically get Jake off the throne and give more power to the seat of the parliament. Okay, and this led to the rise of those Jewish goldsmiths who were handing out money, you know, to be a part of the rise of that Bank of England. All right, which when you read later, you find out that Nathaniel Rothschild, he's sent down into London, and that system of fractional reserve banking begins to dominate the known world, because they're funding both sides of wars. Okay, they're helping fund the colonization of the U.S. All right, and so they became rich fast, man, real fast. Okay.
By the end of the 1600s, England was in financial ruin. 50 years of more or less continuous wars with France and Holland had exhausted her. Frantic government officials met with the money changers to beg for the loans necessary to pursue their political purposes. The price was high. A government-sanctioned, privately owned bank which could issue money created out of nothing. It was to be the modern world's first privately owned central bank, the Bank of England. Although it was deceptively called the Bank of England to make the general population think it was part of the government, it was not. Like any other private corporation, the Bank of England sold shares to get started. The investors, whose names were never revealed, were supposed to put up £1.25 million British pounds in gold coin to buy their shares in the bank. The bank was duly chartered in 1694 and started out in the business of loaning out several times the money it supposedly had in reserves, all at interest.
The expansion and globalism at that time allowed them to gain riches quickly, and they're still doing that today. All right? So I want to read this real quick. Deuteronomy 28 and 44. This is one of the curses. It says, "He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail." Okay, and that's what's happened now, because our people have fallen off from the law, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shah. Now we have Esau lending to us. We have to go to him for the want of all things. He has everything on the planet Earth, man. All right, and he is compelled to take it as far as he can go into eternity if he can, man. That's why he wants to chip you. That's why that mark of the beast is being pushed right now, along with all the other global turmoil that's happening at the same time. It only makes sense. Okay? Let me get this right here. This right here, it says Muhammad Ali bin Marcus at blogspot.com. One of the things that he posted I felt was interesting. It says Cromwell and the English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell, the Messiah. It says above, Rosicrucian Mason Oliver Cromwell. In 1642, when King Charles I of England, the son of King James, the brother of Elizabeth Stuart, wife of Frederick of the Palestine of the Rhine, tried to arrest 5 members of Parliament for obstructive behavior, the English Masonic Civil War erupted, and Oliver Cromwell assumed command of the parliamentary forces. The Civil War in England ultimately toppled the Stuart dynasty with the beheading of King Charles I. There were among the Cromwellian Puritans some influential Rosicrucians who funded his revolution. Among the Rosicrucians were the powerful Kabbalistic Marrano Jews, who convinced Cromwell that without the spread of Jews worldwide, the biblical millennium could not arrive. Cromwell did their bidding by allowing them to immigrate to England. Well-placed Rosicrucians gave Cromwell advanced knowledge of British troop movements. Consequently, he won every battle. Later, during his pictoriate, Cromwell surrounded himself with Rosicrucian Masons. Cromwell promised Jewish representatives that through Freemasonry, he would symbolically rebuild for them Solomon's temple. The Jewish document that Cromwell used to turn Freemasonry into the synagogue of Satan was the Kabbalah. This caused many Jews to consider the possibility that Cromwell might be their Messiah. And that's why even to this day you have Oliver Cromwell Day. Just like they got Christopher Columbus Day over here for that piece of shit. You have them celebrating Cromwell over there. Alright? He's heralded greatly. Read this right here. This is from Wikipedia. The resettlement of the Jews in England. The resettlement of Jews in England was a historic commercial policy in the 17th century. It forms a prominent part of the history of the Jews in England. Background: in 1290, King Edward I of England issued an edict expelling all Jews from England. 365 years later, the situation was reconsidered. No, that's interesting. The commercial policy that led to the Navigation Act in October 1651 made Oliver Cromwell want to attract the rich Jews of Amsterdam to London so that they might transfer their important trade interests with the Spanish Main from the Netherlands to England. Alright? The mission of Oliver St. John to Amsterdam, though failing to establish a coalition between English and Dutch commercial interests as an alternative to the Navigation Act, had negotiated with Manasseh ben Israel in the Amsterdam community. A pass was granted to Manasseh to enter England, but he was unable to use it because of the war between England and the Netherlands, which lasted from 1652 to 1654. You study that, you'll see what happened after that war, man. So they systematically began to get their way up in there through policy and war, man, and deceit. This is the way of the Edomites. Okay, they're the devil, the Diablos, deceiver. Okay, so I just want to get there, and you brothers can look this up, go into that, man. There's a lot of interesting information, and you can see how basically over the dispensation of time, all those little political moves allowed these damn devils to get up in a high seat, because they were just some little nobodies, man, before that. But the scripture says that they were going to go down for that period of that 1,000 years, man. All right, and that's how it went down, and it took time for them to rise back up and really get everything. Okay, going back to this, we're gonna go down to this paragraph right here. It says, in 1534, by the Act of Supremacy, the Church of England was established as the official religion of England by King Henry VIII. During the 16th, 17th century, Puritan beliefs based on the teachings of Wycliffe and Calvin was increasing. Go down to this next verse. It says, the Stuart King Charles I, who wished to maintain the preeminence of the Anglican Church, came into intensified conflict with the Puritans, who were making great progress in proselytizing the entire population. After the assassination of Charles' trusted friend and advisor, the Duke of Buckingham, in 1628, he gradually became more isolated. The growing religious division provided a perfect opportunity for exploitation by the Jewish conspirators. As Israel Disraeli, the father of Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, wrote in the life and reign of Charles I, the nation was artfully divided into Sabbatarians and Sabbath breakers. In 1640, one of the leaders of the clandestine Jewish community, Ferdinand Carvajal, a merchant and spy, who was also known as the Great Jew, organized an armed militia of about 10,000 operatives who were used to intimidate the people of London and sow confusion. Large numbers of pamphlets and leaflets were also distributed. There goes that propaganda. Esau has always been using propaganda before he begins to take down someplace. He uses propaganda. All right? And we talked about that. And there's another sit-down I did. It's called PSYOPs, where we go into the propaganda aspect of the algorithm. All right? It says, civil war soon followed between the Royalists, the Anglicans, and the Roundheads. Now, those Roundheads, when you go and look at the brother's video here, those are those Cavaliers. Okay? Those Roundheads. All right? It says, lasted from 1642 to 48. The Roundheads, with their new model army, were victorious, and an estimated 190,000 persons, or 3.8% of the population, died. The leader of the Roundheads was Oliver Cromwell, whose new model army was not only outfitted and provisioned by the chief contractor and professional agitator Ferdinand Carvajal, but also bankrolled by the Jewish moneylenders in Amsterdam. Okay? So this is how Cromwell was able to get his money and was able to get up in there, man. All right? By them Khazarian Jews, them Khazars that was all up in Germany. They was all up in Belgium. All right? Denmark, they was all up in there, man. It says the leader of the Dutch Jews, Manasseh ben Israel, now sent begging petitions to Cromwell asking that the Jews be allowed to immigrate to England in return for the financial favors, which he had so generously arranged. All right? The murder of Charles I. The treachery which Cromwell descended is revealed in correspondence between himself and the synagogue of Mulheim, Germany, June 16, 1947. From Oliver Cromwell by Ebenezer Pratt, in return for financial support, will advocate admission of Jews to England. This, however, impossible while Charles living. Charles cannot be executed without trial, adequate grounds for which do not at present exist. Therefore, advise that Charles be assassinated, but will have nothing to do with arrangements for procuring an assassin, though willing to help in his escape. It says, and here's a reply. Well, OC by Ebenezer Pratt will grant financial aid as soon as Charles removed and Jews admitted. Assassination too dangerous. Charles will be given an opportunity to escape. His recapture will make trial and execution possible. The support will be liberal, but useless to discuss terms until trial commences. Then, you know, it goes into that trial and basically how basically they were able to kill him. All right. Let me see something. I want to skip down. You brothers can read that and go into it further into how they was able to behead and basically kill Charles I. It says The Hidden Origins of the Bank of England by Stephen Goodson. The Hidden Origins of the Bank of England. As the financial crisis worsens in America and across the globe, people want to know, when did it all start? In fact, the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank in the United States is a spin-off of the Bank of England, established in 1964. And as the Earl of Anglesey persistently observed in 1658, it is dangerous to the peace of the kingdom when it shall be in the power of half a dozen or half a score of rich, discontented, or fallacious persons to make an acclamation of our own coin and bullion beyond the seas, and leave us in want of money when it shall not be in the king's power to prevent it. All right, basically giving all the power over to the parliament, which is funded by the bank. So basically the bank tells the parliament what to do, and so not only do they have power over the economy, they have the power over the legislature itself. Okay. It says, as the financial crisis worsens in America and across the globe, people want to know, when did it all start? In fact, the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank in the United States is a spin-off of the Bank in England, established in 1964. Okay, we read that. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, I just want to go into that because all of these political things are tied together. All right, how Oliver Cromwell came in to take down the crown. He was paid off by these Jews. These Jews in the beginning, how they started out was just lending. Basically, people would come to them for gold, and then people would pay them to hold the gold. All right, so you have a goldsmith or a silversmith. You go to him and you pay that man for so much gold, right? So instead of having to carry it around and being risk of being robbed, he just gives you a note that says, look, this dude has bought this much gold from me, stamp. And you can take that and trade that with other people, banknotes. So that those banknotes over time became money. Okay, so what happened was the Rothschilds learned, well, shit, man, I don't even have to actually have this physical gold. I can just say I have that gold, because originally when people came and bought the gold from you, you had to give them the gold right there. So if you didn't have the gold, you can't say you had that. You were limited to how much gold you actually had. But if you giving out banknotes, you can say, yeah. Boom, okay, he bought this much gold. All right. You look at the risk of how you're doing. You might start off with giving out, 15% more banknotes than you have in actual physical gold. But then you stretch it. Man, these guys stretched it all the way to like 80-90%. To where they only had 10% of the actual gold of compared to the banknotes that they've given out. So they've given out, let's say, $9 million worth of banknotes, but they only had $1 million worth of gold actually in their vaults.
Money changers, those who loan out and manipulate the quantity of money, were active in medieval England. In fact, they were so active that acting together, they could manipulate the entire English economy. These were not bankers per se. The money changers generally were the goldsmiths. They were the first bankers because they started keeping other people's gold for safekeeping in their vaults. The first paper money was merely a receipt for gold left at the goldsmith. Paper money caught on because it was more convenient than carrying around a lot of heavy gold and silver coins. Eventually, goldsmiths noticed that only a small fraction of the depositors ever came in and demanded their gold at any one time. Goldsmiths started cheating on the system. They discovered that they could print more money than they had gold, and usually no one would be the wiser. Then they could loan out this extra money and collect interest on it. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking. That is, loaning out many times more money than you have assets on deposit.
This is fractional reserve banking. All right? And so when you put interest on top of all of that, because that's what the money changers did at that time, well, you in there like swimwear, bro. And so that led to the growth and the expansion of the Rothschild empire, man, and basically their stranglehold over everything that you see in the world today. They had the most prominent bank there in England, and then it spread, all right, to France, to Vienna, and to where people say, okay, well, I'm only going to this bank because they big as fuck and I can trust that they gonna take care of my stuff, man. So they took all the other banks of that day out of the market, man, systematically by having them killed through wars. They killed off the competition, you know, or just by creating distrust. And so now you see all across the world central banks in nations. And these central banks run everything that you see in that nation, man. They run all the foreign policies. They run the domestic policies, okay? And now you have this issue where the EU is having this vote, all right? And this vote is for the UK, basically saying, okay, can Great Britain leave the Eurozone? Now, when you are looking at this, you have to consider that the euro currency itself is based by these other countries' currencies. The biggest currency that you got sustaining the euro is the British sterling pound. All right? The British sterling pound is the foundation of the euro in a lot of ways. All right? Because England is a major driver for the economy over there in Europe. Okay? So if the Brexit happens, bro, that can cause that euro to drop dramatically overnight, man. Because the brother Required Yaquan was telling me that someone was kind of just, that's a big deal over there right now. The brother's excited. There's a lot going on, man. You know, we all excited. And he was saying someone that works in the bank was saying people were coming in and trading in their pounds for dollars. They're getting out of the British pound. So if that happens on a large scale, you're gonna have a massive drop in that pound, which is gonna cause a massive drop in that euro, which a lot of these other nations have their currency pegged. Look that up. When you peg your currency, pegged in the euro. Japan, for instance, Japan's money, I think their yen is pegged with that euro, man. The Japanese yen. So if you have collapses in those currencies, it cause basically a wave of collapse of currencies all across Eurasia and even Africa. All right, which will accelerate economic collapse.
Just a pleasant reminder that we aren't safe and that at any moment something big, something calamitous could absolutely happen. The end of the bell curve, statistical model where something major happens that nobody predicts. And it's amazing that people just don't think that these things are possible. Which brings me to today's video, the Brexit, and why it will collapse the Eurozone regardless of what the vote is. You see, if the vote is Remain, the Eurozone will collapse because it's kind of like a married couple. They're having severe problems once a month, so they keep going to counseling, but they have the same problem again the next month, and the month after that, and the month after that, and it keeps getting worse. They're cheating on each other, they're bitching at each other, they're bickering, it's destroying the family, the kids are in jeopardy, it's not working. So even if the UK decides, and the vote's rigged to stay, which I believe it will be rigged one way or another, it's still going to end very badly. It's still going to end in a collapse of the 28-member bloc countries that are a part of this failed experiment that has only lasted 20 years or something like that. If the vote is to leave, and again, that would be engineered as well, but let's just play the counterpoint. If the vote's to leave, that would actually be a good thing for the UK. It would be just like Switzerland depegging from the euro. Everything's gotten better in Switzerland since. It's a very wealthy country. There's been economic growth post the depegging. The currency's doing better. The economy's doing better. Unemployment's doing better. Everything's doing better. So that would be a good thing for the UK if they decided to leave and somehow it was swung that way. But that would only ensure the rest of the member countries would collapse in the Eurozone. You see, there's no good outcome in this case. It all results in collapse, whether or not it's a vote to stay, rigged, or it's a vote to leave, engineered. You know, and what's really heinous about this is how the mainstream media and these politicians are using the tragic death and murder of Jo Cox, the MP who was shot and killed, as her husband says, for her political beliefs, are using that as a guilt trip so that the people of the UK vote to stay. You see how manipulative these assholes really are? These politicians, they'll use anything. And to be honest, the Jo Cox murder to me looked very, very conspiratorial when it happened because it plays perfectly into the hands of the stay political agenda. And it makes everyone else look fanatical. It makes you look like a fanatic if you want to leave. You're like, you know what, this isn't working, this relationship isn't working, you're an alcoholic and you beat me, referring to the Eurozone bloc, we don't want to stay. It makes the other person look like the fanatic, when in reality, it's the Eurozone that is the alcoholic and is the psychopath and that has problems and needs to go in and get some help. So it all ends badly. It's kind of funny. I was watching Peter Schiff last night, a video on CNBC. He was on Fast Money. I'll tune in occasionally. And he was basically telling them that it's going to be awful. It's going to be horrible.
They're just still little cubs. I mean, they haven't really matured into a full-blown bear yet. They have no idea just how bad it's going to be.
Okay, so how bad is it going to be?
It's going to be awful. But, you know,
he says, how much worse? Because since we saw you last, we got a jobs report that some people will say was terrible.
Do you guys remember the financial crisis of 2008? Did you think that was bad?
Yes.
Yeah, this is going to be worse.
Which is exactly what the elite want because they're playing both sides. If you have the catastrophic collapse in the economy through the International Monetary Fund, the elite already have the answer waiting for everybody, man. They already have the answer waiting. And we know pertaining to scripture that the mark of the beast is going to be included within that, man. Because we in those times. Okay? We in those times. All right? I'm going to get this real quick. Proverbs 22:7. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. So with the power of these banks giving out and issuing and coining currency, all right, they've made all the nations of the planet Earth servants, because the nations are borrowing from these banks. All right, during the time of these wars, the actual country goes to that bank and says, hey, we need this money for our roads, for food, for military defense, okay, for transportation. The bank loans them the money under certain conditions. This is how you get income tax. All right? Because the bank is loaning them the money, and in order to secure that loan, that country has to say, okay, we're going to put this much tax on the people.
To buy their shares in the bank. The bank was duly chartered in 1694 and started out in the business of loaning out several times the money it supposedly had in reserves, all at interest.
In exchange, the new bank would loan British politicians as much of the new currency as they wanted, as long as they secured the debt by direct taxation of the British people.
So, legalization of the Bank of England amounted to nothing less than legal counterfeiting of a national currency for private gain. Unfortunately, nearly every nation now has a privately controlled central bank using the Bank of England as the basic model.
Oh, we have to put these laws in there, okay? You have to agree to a contract in order to receive that loan. And with that agreement is economic things social things that country has to do for the bank. All right? And we're seeing that, man. We're seeing these borrowers, these nations are servants to the lender. All right? And the chief nation that's a servant to this lender is the nation of Israel, the true nation of Israel. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. You are in the hands of the lender. Okay? Your masters. All right? The rulers of this world. And that's why we're calling on Yahweh Shem Yahushua to deconstruct this place. And we're watching it happen before our very eyes, pursuing to prophecy. Pursuing to prophecy. Zephaniah 1:11. Hail ye inhabitants of Maktesh, for all the merchant people are cut down. All they that bear silver are cut off. Okay? Maktesh was known for its silver mining. Silver minings, well, they would coin silver. You would come and get it from them. All right? They were part of that money changing system back in the ancient world. Because the system of this fractional reserve stuff, it starts way back then, man. Even during the time of Rome, you have something called the Silk Road, where you had people from China, people from the north, moving and trading all the way down past through Judea and back and forth, man. And so these people had different currencies. All right? Especially Jerusalem, where you had people coming into Jerusalem to celebrate these festivals and from different nations. They wanted to change this money into that money so they could get this. You know, I need turtle doves so I can do this sacrifice. Or I need to buy me a lamb. Passover's coming. Right? It talks about that in the book of Matthew and in the Gospels, man. The money changers. And what the people were buying. What were they buying? They were getting turtle doves. They were doing that, but they were converting coinage too at interest. At interest. You have to pay interest, man. Which, you know, those guys was going off. Okay? So I want to read another thing, because this whole Brexit thing basically is everything coming full circle. They started off this fractional reserve system. It kind of got kicked off in England with the Bank of England. And now we're seeing a possibility of this same nation causing a whole nother paradigm shift, kicking it up to a whole nother level. Okay? And so I want to read this article. This is altmarket.com. It says Brexit. Global trigger, and I got this from the brother Rakayu Kwam Thawadak, man, you know. It says global trigger event. Fake out or something else. Wednesday, 22nd June 2016 by Brandon Smith. Those people who do not avidly track global economic events may be a bit confused by the growing tensions surrounding the UK referendum to exit the European Union, otherwise known as the Brexit. You know, Britain is getting the you know, most light because it's the biggest piece of that economy over there. But the UK consists of England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, I believe. All right. It says, or they are completely indifferent. Unfortunately, the potential fallout surrounding the event could very well affect the entire world, but perhaps not in the manner the mainstream media and international finances would have us believe. I will point out that under normal global economic conditions, the Brexit really shouldn't matter much to anyone outside of the UK. If the EU was fiscally stable, if its banks were solvent, and its national debts were in hand, if the EU was actually a practical and successful supranational body, then the damage done by a British vote to leave the Union would be minimal. Of course, this is not the case. As many other independent economic analysts and I have been outlining for years, the European Union is on the verge of economic breakdown. Look at it this way. If financial turmoil in a tiny member state like Greece can cause widespread doubts about the EU's stability, then there is something fundamentally volatile about the entire structure. Okay? And what creates that volatility? That ridiculous amounts of usury and interest, man, from that fake money that they print now. Okay? The Brexit matters greatly to the future of the EU because theoretically, if one of its most prominent members says adios, then other members may do the same. As it stands now, the EU cannot afford to have even one member, economically large or small, drop out of the system. All right? And so brothers understand this, the European Union is basically all these European states coming together and focusing themselves under one government. Okay? So you don't have Britain anymore. You don't have Germany anymore, or France or Spain. They're all part of the EU. The borders are open to each other. Trade is controlled out of basically the EU Parliament instead of your own nation. Okay? Economically, the EU bank tells everybody how it's going to go. All right? And so people are pissed off at that. They want their national sovereignty back. And that's the whole argument that's happening right now. Even over here in the U.S., you have Trump talking about we need to get rid of globalism and worry about America, versus Hillary talking about we need to expand peace globally. And in order to do that, we have to have, economic plans and social plans and these type of plans amongst all the other nations so we can all live as one. So this is the argument right now with this Brexit. The people want out of this global plan, out of this international global control. And they want to, Great Britain to be Great Britain, Scotland to be Scotland. Okay? Ireland to be Ireland. They don't want to be a part of this group that controls them from the outside. People in Scotland like, what the fuck? I gotta listen to somebody in Frankfurt, Germany tell me what to do. Alright, it says, the Brexit matters to the rest of the world, including the US, because of the brilliantly destructive program of interdependency and globalism that has shaped our financial house for decades. Interdependency leads to extreme economic weakness because no piece of the global system has the tools to survive without the other pieces. So no one's truly self-sufficient. Okay? And on top of this, when one part of the machine goes down, all the other parts are affected. You see, I was telling about how the British pound could affect the euro, which could affect the yen, which is going to can affect all these other currencies, because they're all pegged on each other through financial agreements that they've accepted through the IMF to receive money so they can become more and more rich. Okay? It says, it is truly horrible and seemingly idiotic system, but not so idiotic if you accept the reality that it is deliberately engineered to fail. When you examine the fiscal foundations of every major economy in the world today, what you find is a financial shell game. The fundamentals tell us the truth. With global exports and imports in decline, all right, global shipping of raw materials in decline, manufacturing in decline, retail in decline, employment in decline, real unemployment numbers, including those people no longer counted by the Labor Department, skyrocketing, and the number of people on welfare and food stamps skyrocketing. In reality, the global economy is one massive, thick-skinned bubble searching for a sharp object to impale itself on. The Brexit may very well be that sharp object. Okay? And so this writer is saying, look, they can use this Brexit as a scapegoat to completely implode this economy and start up an even bigger global plan that they have behind the scenes amongst the chaos of collapse. It says, before I go into the various details surrounding Thursday's vote, I want to state that I am in full support of the British movement to leave the European Union. The reason behind a successful Brexit is solid. It says the European Union's rabid socialist tendencies have created a doom scenario for all those shackled in the supranational body. Forced multiculturalism and cultural Marxism has opened a floodgate of Islamic refugees, with, blah, 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 with the, they bringing in all the Syrian refugees and everything like that. And so people feel like they losing their shit. And the Lord even told us not to mingle with the other nations, man. That's how we went down. We went down by mingling with these other nations, taking on their customs, The Most High created landmarks, borders, barriers for a reason, okay? And if we all would stay within our order, with the true nation of Israel being on top and everything being ushered out to all the other nations from there, everybody would be chilling. The scriptures tell you how we can live in peace. And this whole multiculturalism BS is not it, okay? Let's keep reading. It says, the EU governing body is a mostly faceless and unaccountable bureaucracy that hands down legal dictates from on high, from on high, while the general population of the member states have little or no input. The European Central Bank's monetary policies support failed financial institutions and fraudulent markets, while siphoning tax dollars from stronger and more successful nations in order to feed the debt addictions of the weaker country. The very philosophical engine behind the EU is one of collectivism. It is a system that requires a hive mentality in order to function. Only a fool would want to participate in such a political and financial farce. That said, I think we need to take stock of certain underlying realities. First, as mentioned earlier, the EU, like most of other economies today, is an interdependent structure and is thus designed to fail. The EU is not the golden goose for globalists. It is just another appendage that can be sacrificed or rearranged in order to achieve greater goals. The EU is a means to an end. It is not the ultimate prize. The ultimate prize for globalists will be a system like the EU with a single currency and a single monetary authority. But this new system would erase all sovereign borders and install a single governmental authority as well. What does this mean? It means the failure of the EU does not necessarily mean a failure for the internationalists. For groups of globalists that promote the ideology of Fabian socialism, a breakdown of the EU, whether partial or total, can be used as leverage for a larger and more centralized global power structure in the long term. He says, mark my words, when the system comes crashing down, whether after the Brexit or after another trigger event, the internationalists will say that the EU failed not because it was centralized, but because it was not centralized enough. So that they can use the Brexit to say, look, you guys want to do your own thing, man? And the global markets have gone in a frenzy because of that. It's your fault. We need to create these systems to get this shit back together. Don't you want to wake up and have Starbucks? Don't you love your McDonald's? Don't you want to go to vacation in Colorado every summer? Don't you want to have your Babylonian juice? It says, even though I support the Brexit movement based on the principle that supranational unions are a heinous affliction upon free individuals and nations, I have no illusions that a successful Brexit vote will actually harm the globalists. In fact, they may very well desire the UK to leave the EU. Why? As noted, the global economy is on the verge of implosion. The only elements of the system that are not yet crashing are stock markets. This is because stock markets do not in any way reflect the fundamentals of the economy. They only reflect investor perceptions of the economy. Perceptions can be manipulated for a time, and public psychology can be subdued by false optimism and lies. It can take years for a population to psychologically accept the idea that they're in the midst of a recession or depression. Therefore, it can take years for stock markets to financially reflect the legitimate dangers within the economy. Okay, because even with the biggest economy in the world, the United States economy, which with the petrodollar is able to basically do what it wants globally, these people over here don't understand Brexit and what's going on with these other markets. They don't understand what's going on in Venezuela and the famine that's happening there. You know, they're not talking about that. People ain't talking about that. I said something about the Venezuela, you know, hyperinflation to somebody the other day. It was like, oh really? Wow, that's terrible. That's so terrible. The people don't know, and they don't give a fuck. Okay, but when that stock market hit and take that big ass 1,300 drop in one day, and the Asian markets are crashing, and all you hear on the news is ding 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 ding, because they're going back over it over and over again. You know, it's gonna sink in with these people. All right. It's gonna really sink in. And people in Venezuela, they get it now. They ain't talking all that shit no more. Cause if you know people from Venezuela, man, they some cocky people, man. You know, I'm just keep it straight, keep it real. All right, it says, central banks, at the behest of globalist institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the Bank for International Settlements, have spent incredible amounts of capital and energy managing public perception. Through subversive monetary policies, they have weakened national economies to the point of collapse. And this collapse is meant to create enough chaos to inspire the masses through fear to support greater centralization. While certain banking institutions may fall, the bankers themselves have no intention of taking any blame for the inevitable collapse. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is not going to get blamed for a collapse in the sterling pound or the euro. Okay, they're behind the scenes funding everything. Okay, people are going to blame the leaders of the EU, so they'll get rid of those leaders, put in some more puppet leaders that support more centralization and have the answer for the EU problem. That's what they'll do. Okay? That's what they always do. It says, if you examine modern history, the past century, you will find in the aftermath of every crisis that globalist organizations have consistently blamed nationalism and sovereignty while promoting socialism and centralization as the most civilized solution. That is to say, globalists create widespread war and financial terror, blame conservative ideals such as sovereignty, then argue that such ideals can be eradicated for the greater good of the greater number. We have to be honest in our exploration of the Brexit event and admit that in this case, the globalists win either way. If the Brexit succeeds, the globalists can allow the market systems they have been inflating for years to finally crash. They can then blame those dastardly far-right extremists in the UK for their triggering a domino effect within the global financial system, conveniently scapegoating British conservatives, moderates, and sovereigns for a breakdown that was going to happen eventually anyway. Their solution will once again be to argue for the end of barbaric conservative principles and install complete centralization and socialism as the cure. If the Brexit fails, or if it is controlled fake out, they can artificially boost markets for perhaps another month while distracting the public away from the negative fundamentals yet again. We should also not overlook the possibility that the referendum vote may be rigged one way or another. Current polls indicate that a tie between the Leave crowd and the Remain crowd. Any vote this close is the easiest kind of vote to rig a few percentage points to either side. I believe the Brexit vote may be allowed to succeed, and here's why. And I'm going to hit these, man, and then we'll close up IKEA, man, because that pretty much is making my point of everything, you know. All this, you know, the history of all this stems back from when Esau was first being able to allow, to get the fatness of the earth, man. And from that point on, he's ruled in deceit and mischief. Okay? And he's used these financial systems to fund his sword. All right? And he kills any opposition. But the Most High is gonna make it to where he gonna create a sword to kill himself, man. He's gonna destroy himself in thermonuclear fire, man. All right. So we're gonna read that. Okay, it says 1. Elites, including George Soros, have suddenly decided to dive into the market and place bets on the negative side, dumping large portions of their stock holdings, shorting equities, and buying up gold and gold mining shares. Soros has been preparing his portfolio for a successful Brexit vote, while at the same time publicly warning of the supposed dire consequences if the referendum passes. The last time Soros put this much capital in the markets was 2007, just before the crash of 2008. And you know, another shout out to another brother is Kadar Shapat, who's been sending out all that news information. And within some of the stuff that he's been sending about the movements of George Soros.
Well, we have Puppet Master Soros stating that this Friday could become a Black Friday if the Brexit goes down. You also have the so-called Dr. Doom agreeing with that, saying that this is going to affect a lot of different things. They're trying to basically tell the people that if you try to break away from the union, it's going to be bad for you, bad for your jobs, bad for your money, the pound. And he has the reputation already as being the man who broke the Bank of England back in 1992. He's saying that if this happens, if the Brexit goes down, if the people choose to break away from the union, because they're trying to form all the different countries into unions globally, that's their steps closer to building one huge world order. When you have these countries that want to break loose and go independent and not be a part of that, that's a huge issue for them. When a move like this happens, many people say that even if the people voted for the Brexit, that it wouldn't happen, that they just would not allow it, that whatever may happen is going to happen. And Soros saying that the pound this time could crash by more than 20%. Talking about a recession and going on and on. But the Britons believe that they can break free on their own, strike up their own deals, make more money independently, be able to survive better and not have to depend on other countries. It's something that they're going to have to wait and see what happens here with this, but many people say, just like most votes, this one, even if the people vote for it, it would be rigged. And Soros seems to really want them to stay in to his advantage.
And there's certain alternative media that's been paying attention to it, but there's a lot that hasn't. Okay? 2, the IMF and the BIS have been warning since late 2015 for 6 to 8 months that a global economic downturn is on the way in 2016. We saw considerable volatility at the beginning of this year, and markets are due for another shock. The last time the BIS and IMF were so adamant about an impending crash was late 2007, just before the 2008 market plunge.
The world recovery, which was weak in the first place, is in danger of stalling. The epicenter of the danger is Europe, but the rest of the world is increasingly affected. There is an even greater danger, namely that the European crisis intensifies. In this case, the world could be plunged into another recession. This was the bad news. let me turn to the good news. With the right set of measures, the worst can definitely be avoided and the recovery can be put back on track. These measures can be taken, need to be taken, and need to be taken urgently.
Because the IMF has been talking about this since last September, okay, October, and there's another announcement set to come up in September, October, and it's going, Lord willing, it'll be in the wake of absolute mayhem. All right. 3. While the Federal Reserve has not yet implemented a second rate hike, I still believe they could use a rate hike this year to stab markets in the back if necessary. Janet Yellen pulled a maneuver which was almost as upsetting to investors. After the Fed policy meeting last week, markets were moderately exuberant and stocks were rising. Yet Yellen opened her mouth and blamed the Brexit for the rate hike delay. Here's what the Fed has done. By delaying the second hike for another month and then blaming the Brexit vote as a primary reason, they have created a bit of a paradox. If the Brexit vote passes, the Fed is asserting that they may not hike rates for a while, giving market investors the impression that the global economic recovery is not all that it's cracked up to be. If the Brexit vote fails, then the Fed must hike rates in July, otherwise they lose all credibility. I believe Yellen's claim that the Brexit vote was the cause of the hike delay was highly deliberate. It has triggered what many people what may become a growing firestorm in equities and commodities. Okay? From the point of view of investors, if the Brexit passes, then all hell breaks loose. If the Brexit fails, then the Fed will hike rates, and once again, all hell breaks loose. So they got it either way, man. Because y'all notice after the last rate hike, we had that big drop in the economy. Now it's spiking back up, preparing for another rate hike, and that could totally crash things. All right. Because when you raise those rates, it makes people not want to enter the markets. Okay. For the Fed refuses to hike rates, even though its number one scapegoat is out of the picture, it loses all credibility and all hell breaks loose. It's a lose-lose-lose scenario for the investment world, which is probably why global markets plunged after Yellen's remarks. Investors have been relying on the predictability of the central bank intervention for so long that now when any uncertainty arises, they run for the hedges. The Fed decision to blame the Brexit for the rate hike delay could indicate foreknowledge for a successful Brexit vote. Okay. It says, the recent murder of British lawmaker Joe Cox is perhaps the weirdest piece of the puzzle of the Brexit. For one thing, it makes no sense for a pro-Brexit nationalist, Thomas More, to attack and kill a pro-EU lawmaker when the polls for the Leave group were clearly ahead. Okay? One could simply argue that the guy was nuts, but I'm rather suspicious of the lone gunman, and his insanity has yet to be proven. I see no reason for this man, insane or not, to be angry enough to kill while the Brexit side was winning in all the polls. If someone was using him as a weapon only to discredit the Brexit vote or sway the public towards staying in the EU, you would think that they would have initiated the murder closer to the day of the referendum, when it would have the most effect. The information flooded public has days to digest new data and forget Joe Cox. My theory, Thomas More has handlers, or he is just mentally disturbed patsy, and his purpose is indeed to paint the Brexit movement as angry or crazy. But this does not necessarily mean the intent behind the assassination of Joe Cox was to break the back of Brexit movement. Rather, the goal may only be to perpetuate a longer-term narrative that conservatives in general are a destructive element of society. We kill, we're racist, We have a archaic mindset that prevents progress. We divide supernatural unions. We even destroy global economies. We're storybook monsters. Okay, and that's just the way that people are programmed in general, man. You know, that's the way people are programmed. To do their own, be on their own, have their own borders, you know. But they also programmed to be ruled over, man. They need structure, but they need righteous structure. Okay, and the earth is crying out for righteousness. The earth is crying out for righteousness. So I'm gonna read this little and close out. This is Sirach chapter 12 verse 10. Never trust thine enemy, for as like iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. Though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take no heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away. Set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat. And that's what they did back during the time of the Parliament with King James. And that's what they've done to the nation of Israel now. They've taken our seat in Jerusalem. They've taken our seat as the leaders of the nations, man. And they falsely, these Khazars are saying that they are the chosen people that should rule. And now they're trying to move into one of their final pieces to control the whole world, man, forever. To try to create a synthetic blessing. All right? They want to put that mark of the beast chip in you, man. And that's full servitude to his created Godhead. That's full carnal servitude to the image of the beast, man. All right? And so that's why we're calling on Yahweh Shem Yahushua to his return, man. That's why we got to keep ministering, keep pushing out this word, man. Because when the 144K are sealed up, that call is going to be made. And through the Spirit, Apostle Tahar said he believed that we close, man. You know, or that number has been accomplished. And so that's why things are moving so fast. Because that call is going out to the four winds, man, to those angels holding the four winds over in the Middle East to say, go ahead, all right, man. Let's get this World War III popping. So the algorithm is coming together. Okay? Set him not by thee, least when he has overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat. And thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith. I always remember, man. Don't trust this man. Okay, so when we see these things, there's nothing new under the sun. Esau has always been trying to use deceit and deception, and y'all brothers, know those scriptures, But I just wanted to kind of go over this Brexit and kind of show you that they can manipulate these markets. So if you brothers have scriptures that y'all want to post in the comment board, please do. If y'all have more points, please post them in the comment board. You scoffers too. And with that, I want to give all praise and glory to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. Send double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace, love, and salutations to you brothers around the globe, preaching the words of sincerity and truth. Shalom.
Such is the power of these central banks that they soon take total control over a nation's economy. It soon amounts to nothing but a plutocracy, ruled by the rich. The central bank scam is really a hidden tax. The nation sells bonds to the central bank to pay for things it does not have the political will to raise taxes to pay for. But the bonds are purchased with money the central bank creates out of nothing. More money in circulation makes your money worth less. The government gets as much money as it needs, and the people pay for it in inflation. The beauty of the plan is that not one person in 1,000 can figure it out because it's usually hidden behind complex-sounding economics gibberish.